You're listening to The Artist Athlete, episode 141. This podcast is dedicated to Circus. It's a place for professionals in the industry to share their stories, viewpoints, and information, and a place for outsiders to get a sneak peek into this world. Hey, friends, fans, and foes, I'm Shannon McKenna, and I'm the host of the Artist Athlete podcast. If this is your first time listening to the podcast, welcome. If this is your 141st time listening to the podcast, welcome back. This has been a passion project of mine for the last 4 years, and I absolutely love doing it. And the only way I am able to do it is through support of people who are listening, who are just like you. You know, they're putting on their makeup backstage, they're doing cardio at the gym, they're just sitting around on their phones, stretching in their splits. Maybe they're driving in their car, or maybe they're just like looking out the window, daydreaming of the day that they can run away and join the circus. Whatever they're doing, it doesn't matter. You're probably doing something like that too, and the only difference between the two groups is that they have pledged to give small amounts of money every single month to help me continue to make this podcast so that they have something to listen to, something to be inspired by, something to daydream along with, something to learn from. And I think you like having that thing too. So if you would, go to patreon.com/theartistathlete is the place to go to join the Cool Kids Club and support the podcast. Every single dollar counts, and it all goes back into making the content you and everyone else knows and loves every single week. So do it now. Don't do it later, because I know you're going to forget about it later. I always forget about this shit later. So go now to patreon.com/theartistathlete and sign up to become a Patreon today. My guest today is Lea Toran Jenner. Lea is a sear wheel artist who has been training since she was 5 years old, first in gymnastics and later in sport acrobatics. From 2011 to 2014, she attended l'École nationale du Cirque in Montreal, and during her time, Jenner met Francis Perrault, and they started performing together as duo Unity. Their act won a bronze medal at Cirque du Soleil. In the following years, she performed with her duo as well as a solo artist. Her most important engagements include the Feuerwerk des Circus. I just said that with a French accent, I think, but it's actually a German name. Anyway, the Christmas Circus Roncalli and the Moulin Rouge in Paris, where she performed over 1,000 shows in 2 years. That's a lot of shows. She's currently on tour with Cirque du Soleil's Lucia. In addition to being an entertainer, Lea is also an educator. With a TikTok following of almost 300,000, she creates behind-the-scenes videos of what it's like to be a circus artist. Here's my interview with Lea Toran Jenner. Let's do it.
Let's do it.
Lea?
Yes, Shannon.
Welcome to the Artist Athlete podcast.
Finally. Oh
Yes!
I made it.
You've arrived, baby. So can you tell us who you are and what you do?
Oh my God, yes. So my name is Lea Toran Jenner. I'm half German, half Spanish. That's the Toran is Spanish, Jenner is German. I'm a circus artist. I specialize in sear wheel duo, and I also do aerial chandelier. And I'm currently performing for the Cirque du Soleil show Lucia.
Yeah.
Was this good?
That was amazing. That's all the information you need. Wait, so when you say you perform with aerial chandelier,
Yes.
how did you study that discipline?
Well, I don't think it's an actual discipline.
Yeah, I don't either. That's why
it's more like it copies. I would say it copies from aerials.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, I mean, the people listening to this, they know about circus. It's easier, I feel. It's like it copies a bit from aerial hoop, maybe from trapeze, maybe a bit from pole, but it's easier because you have more places to hold on to and you find cool positions. But the cool thing about it is that it's visually very appeasing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's beautiful to see, and then you just add your circus into it. But it's more like a gala act, I would say, than my sear wheel acts. The sear wheel acts are more classic circus acts.
Cool. So how did you start?
Yes. So I always wanted to be a circus artist. This was my dream since I'm 5 years old. I actually watched Saltimbanco when I was 5 in Madrid with my family. And the first act, there was like an adagio hand-to-hand act, and it was a woman and her husband, I guess. It was a family and their kid. And the kid must have been around the same age. And I just thought that I was the kid. Like for me, I wanted to be that kid so bad. And then when we went home, I was like, I want to do that, I want to do it. And my parents were like, well, like, how do we do this? And they just thought it was like a little kid's dream. And they sent me to do gymnastics because they thought, well, that could be kind of similar. That's what she wants to learn, like handstands and tricks. And also had like a lot of energy when I was small. So that's kind of how it started. I did gymnastics until I was 11. Then I changed to aerobic gymnastics, which is a very weird sport. You can compare it to cheerleading, but without the pyramids. And you can also compare it to synchronized swimming, but it's on land. So it's an acrobatic gymnastic discipline with a lot of dance on music. Sport aerobic. Very strange. Do you know this?
Yes. I discovered it because of another friend of mine who's in Circus started with it, and she admitted it to me very much like these circumstances after a couple glasses of wine. She was like, I hate to say this, but this is how I got started. And then I went on YouTube and I watched like 20 million videos about it because it's so entertaining.
It looks like gymnastics on cocaine, kind of.
Yes.
Like so fast speed, and the numbers, I mean, they're not numbers, but the routines, they're like 1 minute 30 long. And it's like nonstop. You jump, you run, you do saltos, you jump on the floor. Lots of jumps into split, jumps into push-up. Very acrobatic, very fast-paced. So I did that, and I was actually like in the German national team, and like I took this really far. But I always.
Why did you do that instead?
It was kind of the only thing that there was in my city, and when I switched from normal gymnastics to this type, I was getting scared. It was the time where you had like saltos on balance beam, and where you kind of started to think about what happens if I let go now, like on the bars, for example, like, okay, you're swinging all around on the bar, and then what happens if I let go? And then you kind of start thinking, and I think at that age, I was like, ooh, I could hurt myself. Maybe not anymore. So that was it was funny because now I'm way less scared than when I was 11. Usually it's the other way around. But that's why I changed. And it was the only sport that was gymnastic-y in my small town in Germany.
Okay.
But I always, during all this time, I still wanted to be in the circus. And my parents keep saying, well, you're not born in the circus, so there's no way to be in the circus. And it's mostly because they didn't know any better either. They're academics, they work in the university, like completely different background. And when I was 15, my dad did a sabbatical in McGill in the university there. So the whole family came over, and we were 6 months in Montreal. And at the summer months, I think around May or so, we saw posters of the National Circus School like everywhere, and we saw the show. And my mom, and I don't know how she found this out, but she found out that they had summer camps, and they still have these until today. So for anybody listening who wants to maybe try that, they have summer camps from kids from I think 12 to 18 years old. You have to apply, sending in photos. And basically you have to have some kind of background as a dancer or as a gymnast. And it's for people to discover and to figure it out and to see what you can still learn at that age, and maybe if you're interested in circus. And so I sent in my photos, I got accepted. It was like, oh my God, I can train for 2 weeks in the National Circus School in Montreal. Wow. And the moment I stepped into the building, I was like, I want to do this is it. Like I found it. It's still possible. I was 15 at that time. It's still possible. It's not too late. And I don't have to be born in it, and I can do it here. So for 2 weeks, I was training with the actual coaches from the school that do this in summer. So I was also getting a lot of help and feedback, and I asked about how would I actually get in and how would I apply. And I went back to do that same camp because there was no other circus around where I lived. So basically it was a whole year training by myself. I wanted to do hand balancing at that time.
So you went back to Germany?
I went back to Germany. So this was exactly. This was 2 weeks in summer.
Okay.
After the 6 months we've done in Montreal. And then we went back to Germany, back to normal life, back to aerobic gymnastics. But I would train in my own room, hand balancing and juggling and like anything I could do that was circus. And I did that for the whole year until in summer again, I could go there again. And this was because this was like my dream, and my parents were like, for Christmas and birthday and everything together, you can do this again. So I had to apply again and all of that. And through that, I met artists who were in the school, and I kind of got a feel for what they wanted to have and what they were looking for at the auditions. And then I auditioned when I finished my high school degree in Germany, and got accepted. And this was in 2011. I was 19 then.
Okay.
So this is how I got into circus. And then once I was in circus school, I discovered Serial. I learned everything I know now, most of it there.
I have a few questions though, before we get into all of that. The first question is, did you only audition once?
Yes.
Cool.
I auditioned only once. I flew there because you could also audition in Paris, which would have been easier, or you could have sent a video. But people told me, come here if you can, because you will have
good advice.
All the teachers are there. So in Paris, you have just a fraction, like you just have 4, 5 or 6 teachers. But in Montreal, it's actually everybody. And because they already knew me, it was like, oh, it's a girl from the summer camps. So that was advice that I got. And yeah, it was
because the other thing you said was you had kind of figured out what they were looking for, what they wanted.
Yeah.
What did you figure out?
Yeah, well, it was mostly they want to see potential. So they want to see how strong you are, how flexible you are, and maybe less of a finished, polished artist. I don't know if you talked about this in other episodes, but the first day you do like strength exercises and flexibility, and this is just about numbers. Like you should do between 20 and 30 push-ups. You should do leg lifts, chin-ups, like the basic of the basic, and basic acrobatics, handstand. You can actually find all of this information on their homepage. They tell you all
But
of
I think
this.
it's important to hear this from someone who's done it, because I know so many people who like focus on the act, or they focus on certain aspects of it rather than focusing on the potential, which is what you're talking about.
Exactly. So I would definitely focus on just like your strength and your flexibility first, and a bit of everything. Also acrobatics, you need to have a base in acrobatics, base of like holding a handstand and doing a cartwheel and like those things. Then the next day, after the first night, they cut half of the people.
Yeah.
So this, I think everybody who prepares can pass. Then the second day, you have dance and theater. And here they want to know, can you listen to music? Do you understand music and beat? And theater, I think it's just, are you kind of comfortable on stage? Because I didn't have any experience in theater. I had to improvise something. And I could tell it was just like, is she going for it? Is she doing it? Is she risking it? Or is she scared? So that's the next thing is for the second day, I would say go for it. Same for the dance. We had to learn a choreography, but we also had to do improv. And it was about presence and about how comfortable are you on stage. And then on the third day, you do your act that you prepared and you can do anything you want. And I had the feeling it was not a lot about
what did you prepare?
I did handstands, hand balancing act.
Really?
And it was, I need to find a video of this because this was a mix of hand balancing and aerobic gymnastics because that's what I used to do. So I would do a hand balancing. I brought my little canes and I did my handstand routine. And in the middle of it, I would like jump around and jump and split and smile, pose, and then go back to my cane, which was like not at all what they're looking for, but what they were looking for was the presence and like me enjoying doing that.
And the potential of seeing that like that takes strength, that takes endurance, that takes certain things.
But they didn't take me for handstand. So on the last day, they make you try disciplines and they want to see how you react to feedback. So for example, let's say you have an acro class and they correct you. They want to see how fast do you accept, like how can you implement what they're teaching you? And that's also important to them to see, okay, if somebody tells you point your feet and you can't do it and you just can't understand what they're giving you as feedback, that will not help in the future either because you need to be able to work with coaches. Mm-hmm. So on that day, they make you try disciplines where you think there's potential. And they made me try Chinese pole. And I'd never done Chinese pole. But I was kind of trying things around and then I just tried to do like a flag and I could hold a straddle flag and I'd never done it. And I was surprised, and the teacher was surprised. And I was like, have you ever done this before? I said, no, I've never done this before. And then so they saw potential for that discipline. And my year, there were a lot of people wanting to do handstands. And actually later, I also heard that I don't have the body type for handstands. I'm too tall and too heavy. And the National Circus School in Montreal is very much about, it has changed. We can talk about this later. It has changed because the direction lately has changed. And all of this might have been adapted to a bit more modern version. But at this time, this was 2010 when I applied.
Yeah.
It was still like you have to have a certain body type for a certain discipline. And so it wasn't handstands, but they accepted me for Chinese pole. And then I started the school doing 2 weeks of Chinese pole, and it was in the middle of August in Montreal. We were super hot. But for Chinese pole, you have to put all these covers on and like jeans and protective everything. And I was sweating and it was hard and you had to climb up the pole. And I was like, what am I doing? Like, I don't like this. And then I asked to change for seal wheel. I'd seen people do seal wheel. I tried it a little bit and I thought it was super beautiful. And luckily, they let me change.
Nice.
Yeah. I don't know what the question was, but here we are.
The question was about like going to the school and what you thought, or how to become what you knew that they were looking for to the audition to get accepted.
That was it. Yeah, exactly. So maybe to go back to that for advice, definitely potential, definitely prepare as much as you can, anything you can, but don't be too stuck up on the act, because like me, I prepared a handstand act, but I never got to do handstand, and they didn't mind that.
But I think what was really smart about what you did is you incorporated the thing that you had gotten formal training in and really focused on, which was the aerobic gymnastics, which I, after seeing that, really would love to see like a virtuosic aerobic gymnastics routine adapted for a circus show. Because there's something about that discipline, like, or not discipline, but like that, whatever the fuck that is, that sport, that like makes me just laugh and like, talk about joy as we were talking before about like how art sometimes has to feel like this heavy thing where you have to have a message. And I feel like aerobic gymnastics is this thing where it's like, you don't have to have a message, but it is delightful to watch.
It makes you happy to watch.
Oh my
You're
gosh.
like, oh, wow. I want
It's like
more.
I'm getting an endorphin contact high.
It's like candy.
That's it. Yeah. The other question I had about a lot of what you're saying is you were talking about, I'm not from a circus family, but also like the age at which you entered or the age at which you discovered circus was, you said 15?
15.
Yeah. There are people who want to get into circus who discover it in their mid-20s, 30s even. What would you say to them?
I would say it's definitely still possible. Definitely. It's just a matter of wanting it. Are you ready to take 3 years and invest in yourself and in your physical form? And then I would also say, be smart about what discipline you pick. There's definitely disciplines, let's say hand balancing. I would not suggest anybody who's 25 to say, I'll do hand balancing. And I'm happy if you prove me wrong. If there's somebody out there who wants to do it, go for it. Number one is, if you really want to do it, then you can. Number two is be smart about what you choose. I think there is disciplines that are easier than others. That's what I was saying with the chandelier, for example, is it doesn't have to be the most acrobatic or the hardest discipline to find work in. So maybe find something that fits you.
Oh, that's such a good point. It's like, what's expectation?
And
too,
that's also a thing. Where do you want to work one day?
Yeah.
Like, do you want to work for Cirque du Soleil in a solo act? Or do you want to do like Monte Carlo Circus Festival? Or do you want to do a cabaret somewhere in Europe and have a beautiful show, but maybe not as high level? I think that's also to have like a realistic standard. I think that makes a lot of sense and is very important. But still, number one is, how much are you willing to do to get there? Because often it's underestimated how much time and how many hours. And people who have started, like I just started gymnastics when I was 5. Those 10 years of gymnastics from 5 till 15 are hard to catch up. Like realistically, somebody starts with 25 would be at that level when they're 35 or 40. Mm-hmm. So that's, and people are not patient enough to wait that long. So they start with 25 and then at 27, they're not there yet. And then they give up. And that's where I would say, give it time, but also invest in yourself and find good teaching so that you're not losing your time as well.
You're a TikTok star now, and you have a lot of this kind of like, I want to say like front-facing information about getting into the industry or talking about that a lot. Is that something that you consciously decided, or is that something that just kind of happened as you built an audience on TikTok?
I think it just happened as I built an audience. I started all my social media. I was doing YouTube already years ago, but it never really picked up as much as TikTok picked up now. I was mostly trying to show people what life as a circus artist actually is, because it's often either romanticized as like this, oh my God, and they're so amazing and how easy, or it's taken to extreme of like, oh my God, they must be training 12 hours every day. They don't have a life. Or it's still completely misrepresented, where they think we all work with elephants and we sleep in some caravan somewhere, which is not true. So that's how I started, basically just showing what I'm doing, my day-to-day life, so that people can actually see what it means to be a circus artist. And then I had all the people asking me because they also wanted to do it, or because I guess it was curiosity or people who also want to go the same way. And the reason why I'm reacting so much to it and why I do so much content about it is because when I was 13 and I didn't know yet that there was a circus school, my parents were telling me, you're not born in a circus, it will never happen. I would have loved to have somebody on TikTok, which didn't exist then, telling me, no, you can actually do it. There's a circus school. Look, there is 5 top 5s I would recommend you. It makes it so much easier. So that's why I'm doing this also for my small little self. That also I went to circus schools and circus shows, and I remember sometimes maybe seeing artists leaving the back door. Or even once, like a super strong memories, I saw a show one day and the next day I saw, and I'm 100% sure, the artist of one of the big acts with a coffee to go in her hand, walking to the direction of the tent. I was, oh my God, it must have been her. But I was scared and I didn't know what to do. So I didn't approach her, and I never actually asked anybody to say hi or for anything. But I would have loved to. So now I'm also trying to open that door. If somebody does come to see a show, that they can always write me on Instagram and come say hi after the show and meet me and be in person and have like an actual maybe role model or somebody to look up to. Like, she did it, I can do it too. That's kind of the message I want to give.
Oh my gosh, I love that. I love that so much.
Yeah, I turned 30 this year. Can you tell? I want to give back now.
You're really thinking about your legacy.
Exactly.
What they're going to remember when you die.
God.
Now that you're an elder. But no, and it's interesting. With my population, I get a lot of, I think 25 to 30 is more where I go. Maybe because Instagram's a little older than TikTok.
Yeah.
Yeah, and people are like, please tell me that it's still possible. Please. It's a weird space because I can't just say, yeah, it's still possible, sunshine, roses. And I love your answer of being like, yes, but what are your expectations and what are you willing to put into it?
Yeah.
Because I think that's really real. So along those lines, when you were at school and discovered that Sierra Wheel was your thing, what did you put into it and what did you expect to get out of it?
So when I started it, I didn't know any Sierra Wheel. And with Sierra Wheel, you have to know that the first, let's say, month, depending on like some people, between 2 and 4 weeks, you're just spending on learning how to make the wheel spin. You can compare this to like bicycle. You first need to ride a bicycle, and then once you can ride it, then you can start doing things on it. So these 2 to 4 weeks are really long and boring because you're just trying and trying and trying and trying. And I think at that point, I knew that I had 3 years in front of me and I was 19. So when you're 19, 3 years is so much time. Forever. That it was like, okay, I have all this time and I'm in this great place. This is going to work out. So I think at the beginning and for the first year, it was very clear, okay, this is what I'm doing. I'm going to be good at it. Easy. In second year, it was a bit trickier because then we're already approaching like halfway. Okay, how far have you come? You're starting to compare yourself, what's on the market. And there also had my own realistic like goals. Where do I want to go? And then it's also the school at that time in Montreal Circus School is very competitive. Yeah. Not just like the people within each other, I wouldn't say that much. I think we were close, and because everybody does a different discipline, it's not like, oh, I'm better than you, because you can't really compare it. But there was a lot of pressure coming from the direction and then going through the teachers, and that kind of fueled us. And there was kind of the pressure of working for a major company like Cirque du Soleil or Cirque or Seven Fingers in Montreal. Europe wasn't really seen that much. I didn't really know that much. And also pressure to do a festival, maybe Cirque de Demain. That's what every artist who goes to a circus school in Montreal wants to do one day. So in second year, I was kind of like, well, am I gonna be good enough to be able to do Cirque de Demain? And I had more doubts. But the good thing is that also in second year, I started working on duo Sierra Wheel, which is actually now one of my major disciplines. I do that with my partner. His name is Francis Perrault. And we're 2 people in one wheel. So it's a romantic act. You have 2 people in one wheel. I'm the flyer and he is the porter. And we have different positions. And we actually went to Cirque de Demain with this act. So the whole pressure.
But wait, how did you decide to work together?
So this happened completely by coincidence. We were friends and he was also doing Sierra Wheel.
Okay.
Also spinning to the left and pretty much my size, because Sierra Wheels, you have to fit them to your size. and there's people spinning to the right and to the left, so you can't just pair up with anybody.
And you don't ever switch?
You don't
Which
ever
side
switch.
you spin to?
No, it's only one
Interesting.
side. So we were friends, and then we started it for fun, and we didn't know that that was actually a discipline. And a little later, we found out that there were some people who had done it before, but at the point we were at, it was okay, let's try this, let's try this, let's try this. And same thing, it took us forever just to be able to spin together. And then we started working on tricks, and we did all of that kind of in our free time. We showed it once in like a small presentation in school, and people were like, oh my God, all these tricks you can do, like that's crazy. And then we saw the potential, and we're like, well, this doesn't exist yet. Oh, this is maybe a festival act worthy act. So we pushed a lot to actually get like the high level that we wanted, especially in technique. And then we could apply for the festival. But to come back to the pressure and to like the time in school, second year was like the doubting year. Way harder to like, am I good enough? What's gonna be my second discipline? Where am I gonna work? And then third year for me was easier. Somehow I had come with peace. I had come with peace with myself. Well, at peace.
Come to peace?
Come to peace. I kind of accepted.
Somewhere, yeah.
I accepted
Peace was
who
found.
I was. Peace was found. I accepted who I was. And I think then also I'd had a lot of technique by then. And at that time, there were not that many girls doing serial. So I didn't compare myself too much to the guys. It was more like, okay, what other girls are out there? And I was like, oh, I'm actually in the major league. So yeah. So I was like, this should work out. But I was happy when we did work at Cirque du Soleil with the duo, because it was like, okay, this is a great springboard, and we should be fine.
Did you graduate as a duo?
We didn't.
So you had the luxury of being a soloist and like knowing what it was like to go through that process alone, and also being in collaboration with another artist.
Exactly. And he was actually 1 year ahead of me.
Okay.
So he graduated a year before me, and he went working, and I graduated the year after. And I actually also got a contract right after the school with Circus with a show called Circus, which I took for 1 year. So he was like, we had this conversation of like, okay, he now has worked as a soloist. What do we do? Do we want to try to get work as a duo? Or I had this offer on the table, and he said, maybe do that year as well. So we both have our experience, we both have our name out there, and then we can work as a duo.
Oh, cool.
Which was the best decision ever, because I learned so much just being on stage by myself, and he as well. So when we then started working together, it was like, oh, easy.
Yeah. What did you learn being on stage by yourself?
So when you're in circus school, we have shows, but we don't have that many. There's like the end of the year shows, but it's really not that much. And in Circopolis, we had a really good year. I think I did 130 shows, which for a small company like that is a lot. For Circus like it's really not that much, but for a small company, it's a lot. And for me, I would say it took me like a month just to get used to like being on stage for real. Like there's an audience and they react to what you do, and it's not every night the same. How do you pick them up if they're not there? Or how do I feel tonight? And like the basics of people are looking at you, people are actually there and they've paid to see you perform. That took me a while to just accept and see and play with. And then also to have an act that you can do 100%. Like, okay, maybe you don't have to put in the biggest trick, even if it's such a cool trick and you worked years on it. Maybe it doesn't have to be in this act every night because you don't nail it every time, and then it's not as flowy, not as nice. So adapting the act to something maybe a little bit easier, but safer. So I had more fun performing it as well. So I think things like that, but mostly stage presence and being comfortable on stage and having time on stage, not hurrying, enjoying it. Like that, I think you can only learn when you are on stage a lot. And in a duo, very often people hide because there's the other person. So it's not as scary. You always have somebody there with you, but the audience can tell. Like, I think if you are a strong duo, if both of you can exist alone on stage as well. And people can see that. Definitely.
Interesting. Yeah.
You have performed as a duo before, right?
I loved it. It was so fun. But I was a soloist for a very long time. And then I performed in a duo because my friend got a contract with her duo partner, and then her duo partner was going to nursing school.
Yeah, like Francis.
Like Francis. Yeah. So she called me up and was like, hey, I know you have like the physical capacity to do this contract. Do you want to do it with me? And so I went and I trained it up. It wasn't like, there wasn't a lot of duo technique in it. It was more just like synchronization in the way that we made it. So, but yeah, it was really lovely. I think the experience of being on a duo, like on a contract, you know, you had someone else in the dressing room to be like, I'm really fucking tired, you know, or like that was really nice. Whereas being a soloist on stage, there's a lot more energy that you have to put into your focus and your presence and performance.
Yeah, and I think solo is always harder because you can't bounce off each other. I also prefer performing with somebody. I think it's more fun and you can bounce off each other and you can create this whole relationship. Like, what is a relationship, which creates kind of a new bubble. And as you say, the whole backstage experience of like
so great.
Going in together and talking and having like your best buddy there all the time. And also the traveling, like people often forget how much time we spend in planes and traveling from one place to the other, or taking down the wheel and building it back up. Or for us, luckily we don't have that much rigging, but sometimes you have to spend a lot of time in the theater just waiting and hanging out. And it's good to do that with somebody else and not be by yourself the whole day.
Yeah, totally.
And
you got Demain, and is that where you got the contract for Moulin Rouge?
Exactly.
Okay.
We did Cirque du Soleil in 2015. This was in the middle of my Cirque contract, for people who are trying to do the math here. And that was actually also maybe something that's interesting for people to know, is when I signed the contract, I told them I would like to do Cirque du Soleil. I'm applying for it. I have no idea if I'm going to be taken, but if I'm going to be chosen to do Cirque du Soleil, I need to have 2 weeks off to do it. And they wrote me that down on a piece of paper, and we're like, yeah, like that's important for you. And it's also important for them in general. Like if they have an artist who did festivals, it's always good.
Yeah.
So very often companies will be very open and give time away. And so that happened. I trained with Francis. He came on tour with me. We were training like after and before the show.
Oh my gosh.
And then we went to Cirque du Soleil, and that was the most stressful performance I've ever done, because we didn't have experience as a duo at that time. We were just like, we need to do it now. There's been never a duo serial before. It's now or never. We kind of also put pressure on us a bit. So we didn't have a lot of experience performing together, and the festival is really stressful to do. So it wasn't our best performance, but we still got a bronze medal, and we got an engagement with the Moulin Rouge in Paris, which is a big cabaret in Paris. So it was like, oh my God, amazing. Plus the Moulin Rouge, I think it was money, and we had just invested in new costumes and we didn't have much money left. So it was like, oh shit, and we have money also. Like it was perfect. So that actually started our duo career. We did one more year of kind of gigging around before taking that engagement at the Moulin Rouge, which was a 2-year engagement. And that was perfect to get our act clean and stable. We did 1,000 shows in 2 years.
Wow.
That's a lot of shows.
Wow. Yeah,
that's
that is
a lot of shows. Yeah.
Damn.
Yeah, and I mean, if you want, I can keep going after what happened. Talking about my life as a performer.
Well, no. But actually, I want to back it up because as I said, you're the first serial artist I've had on the show. I think. Oh, yeah. Maybe I'll edit that later if it's not true. I think it is true though. Yes. But like, what is a sear wheel? Can we go over the history of it? Can we go over,
So the sear wheel was invented, and people say it wasn't invented, but let's say for now it was invented by Daniel Cyr.
Yes.
He's a Quebecois artist. He used to be a juggler, I think, and apparently he made this big wheel. It's a big metal ring about my size, a little bit bigger than me. And in interviews, I always say I spin with it as if you would spin a coin on a table. You make it spin, and I'm inside the coin. You kind of have a visual example there. And apparently he created this big ring and just wanted to manipulation around him as a juggler, like make it.
Oh, so he created it as a prop.
As a prop.
Wow.
And then
Daniel Cyr, you need to come on the podcast. We've tried to get you on before,
Daniel Cyr needs to be on the podcast. I'm pretty sure he has lots of stories.
Yeah, I know he does. But Daniel.
Well, Daniel, come on. Chop, you can do it. So he then, and this is the point that I find amazing, is he managed to spin in it. And that's what I said before, is somebody who will learn this with a teacher, it takes them 2 to 4 weeks. So he figured this out by himself without knowing the technique and without even knowing that it was possible. So that's why I give him a lot of credit, because he also gets, I wouldn't say hate, but he gets like the other side of people where they say in Germany there's a big history of German wheel, and there have been photos and more drawings of people in like a single wheel. And so suggesting that this has been used before. And so why did he put his name on an apparatus that has been used before? Honestly, I don't really mind. I think I give him a lot of credit for having developed the spinning in by himself. And then he took it to Cirque du Soleil and he won silver. And then he kind of made it a circus discipline. And it's one of the newer or newest circus disciplines out there. I think it exists now for about 20 years.
Yeah.
And so it's a big metal ring. It weighs about 15 kilos. The one that I have, I can take it apart into 5 pieces. So I can travel with it on a plane very easily.
And it's wrapped with rubber, right?
It's wrapped with rubber, exactly. The surface you want to spin on needs to be a hard surface, like not carpet, not sand. People have asked me, how can you do it on the beach? No, it can't. And you can take it back to like the coin on the table. Like the best surface for a coin on the table would be like a hard wood or hard even marble is very good, but anything that's soft carpet or anything you will have too much friction.
Okay.
And then it will make it harder.
But concrete asphalt, you could do a sidewalk?
You could. The problem is with the asphalt is that it's really rough surface.
Okay.
And then it will take the plastic apart and it kind of destroys the wheel. So something that's more plain will be better. But for me, usually it's painted wood stages, and sometimes they put a marley, like a dance floor, on top of a stage, and that also works super fine. So it's actually a discipline that you can do quite easily because you just need like a plain surface, about 5
like a
by
dance
5
studio.
meters. Yeah, like a dance studio. You don't need any rigging. You don't need anybody to set it up. That's why it's a great discipline also for gigs.
I think of it a lot as like a great secondary act discipline because the level of entry is so low compared to the payoff, right? Like in 2 weeks, 2 to 4 weeks, you can waltz on a wheel. And that's pretty impressive for a general audience.
I think so, yeah. I think after a year, if you give it full on, like if you full on committed, after a year, you can have a basic act that you can sell. I think the problem is it has been really popular because of that reason. And now there's so many people doing serial on kind of that level that I think as a second discipline, you might be able to sell it. And now we're talking again, where do you want to sell it?
Yeah.
So if it's a second discipline in a casino show, maybe that could work super well. And yes, it's very visual because you see the spinning. So it's maybe a good entry. But if you want to take it to like a top notch, I think now it has become so high level that as anything else, you need to spend years on it.
So for you, when you're looking at a serial act and you consider it high level, I know this is always a really dangerous line of questioning, but what do you look for?
Oh, I think I look for nice transitions. So my coach always used to say, don't do swinging trapeze with your seal wheel. What he tried to say was, don't do push until you get speed and height, and then you do one trick, and then you go back to push. Because we're not on swinging trapeze.
Right.
Which is also actually a problem for people in swinging trapeze. They're always trying to make, how do you connect tricks and how can you make it interesting?
Yeah.
Same for like if you're climbing a rope or climbing a tissue, how do you make the climbing part interesting?
Exactly.
And not just the fall. And some people find the solution of like being pulled up with a motor. It's a great visual solution, but doesn't always work. So with the wheel, it's kind of the same thing. Is if you just keep your momentum, be in a certain part of the stage and just get speed, and then you do one trick and then you do the spinning again, it gets boring quite fast. So that's definitely something I would look for. And then I want to be surprised. But I feel that's for anything I watch now is just want to be surprised. I guess, in a way. Yeah, it's tricky. It's always tricky to watch your own discipline.
Yeah.
So it's so much harder to watch your own discipline than to watch anything else. Because the first time I saw a serial act, I was just, oh my God, this is so beautiful. And I don't even remember if they did super hard tricks or not, because you couldn't see what's a trick and what's a transition and what is just a manipulation. Like it all kind of flew together. And I can't see that anymore. It's kind of sad because now I can I can see the trick and I can see the transition. I can see it all deconstructed. So I think it's very hard for me to watch a serial act and be like, oh wow. I see it more from an outside. Oh, like, yeah, that was really good technique, or that was a cool transition, or what a great choice of music. in other acts, I can have way more fun watching them because I can just enjoy it and I don't see, oh my God, they're building up the trick. It's this trick that's going to be next. Maybe that's what happens for you in tissue. If you see somebody doing a wrap,
I'm like,
you're
oh yeah,
exactly.
you know, like they'll start and I'm like, oh, it's triple. Okay. Yep.
Yeah. So I would say I don't really look for anything specific in the serial act. And I don't even look at them anymore. I used to spend hours on YouTube watching for acts and looking for inspiration and seeing what other people were doing. I don't do that anymore.
Makes sense. Do you feel compelled to innovate, though, on Serial anymore?
I felt really compelled to innovate for a while as a strong female. Not anymore as much, because I know how much time you need to put in to innovate even more. And I think now I have other focuses. So I'm really happy if other people want to do that. I think that's super cool. And especially when I see girls doing crazy tricks or tricks that I try to do and I never manage to do them. I'm like, oh yes, girl, you got it. Like, this is so hard. So I love that. On Duo Wheel, we try to innovate a lot because also most of the stuff we developed ourselves. So this is kind of the small thing I was saying before, is that when we started doing Duo Wheel, we didn't have anybody coaching us, and we tried things and we failed with things, and then we got a trainer who used to do a duo with Daniel Cyr. Her name is Irina Burli. She and him were supposed to do Cirque du Soleil, but at that time they had a really bad carpet floor, so they could never perform the act.
That's so tragic.
It's super tragic, especially because this is like lost in history. Like nobody actually knows this. But so she came into school teaching me a little bit in solo, and when she saw that we were trying duo, she was like, oh shit, I know some stuff I could help you with. The thing was, though, they had a huge weight difference. So he is not hugely tall, but like a stronger guy, and she is tiny, just like a tiny flyer. So they could do things that we can't do because like Francis and me have maybe 10 kilo difference, like really not that much of a weight difference. So we're doing way more counterbalance things, and they were doing more fly porter kind of things.
Okay.
So some things some of the tricks we do now were kind of adapted from stuff that they had created, and some of them are stuff that we completely created. And that we're super proud of, because we like the disciplines, the sequences that we created, they're all on the net. You can find it all. Duo Unity, you can find it all. From the beginning on, we put them out there, and we were kind of a little scared if people would start to copy them. But until now, sometimes we see people copying the beginning of it, but they can't copy the whole sequence. Like, I've never seen somebody copy the whole sequence. And I think it's because they haven't put enough time in. And I'm not saying please do copy us. But for us, that kind of pushing that so far, we're really proud of that. Right now, we are not working together. We can talk about that a little later, because for this year, we are doing separate plans, but we want to work again together in the future. And we would love to still continue to push the discipline and show what there can be done. And maybe there's going to be some new tricks. So that I'm maybe interested of developing a little bit more. But the solo, I feel there's strong people out there who can push even more. And that's crazy, the stuff that's been done.
So from the beginning, you guys decided that you were going to put out your research on the internet.
Yes, we put out, like, let's say full acts, because we wanted to be seen right away. We wanted to be like, we're the first ones to do this, or we thought we were the first ones. And actually we are. So after Daniel Cyr and Irina, maybe there's somebody out there who did that, but we never
But they didn't put it out on the internet, so who the fuck knows?
So that was kind of our strategy, was like, we're going to put it on the internet. And we wanted to do festivals, and we wanted that people see us for like, hey, this is a duo. They do these cool things, and to be seen as soon as possible. And then after that, once that was kind of clear and established, well, we just put everything out there so that people can also see what they're buying. Yeah. So it's not like the.
But you didn't have any fear or anything of like people
copying it? Yes. Yeah. We had a little bit of fear, and that's why also we wanted to do the Cirque du Soleil festival so early. That's the pressure we put ourselves. Is that we wanted to be the first one, so that people will be like, oh, that's what they did. So if somebody now comes and does the same thing, it's going to be like, oh, it's like Duo Unity, which you never want to be like somebody else. You want to be your own.
Yeah, for sure.
So it helped that we were the first ones, definitely.
You do. This is a bigger conversation, I think, than just in Serial, because I'm thinking like, yeah, you don't want to be like anyone else. You want people to be like, oh, she does tissue like Shannon, or like
No.
they do duo like Duo Unity. Like you want to be the reference point.
Oh,
right?
yes, exactly. Definitely, it's always easier to be the first one than
For sure.
afterwards.
So you all aren't working together right now.
Nope.
What was that decision like for the two of you?
So Francis, just a little bit before Corona happened, he had a strong wanting to learn something else and to do something else. I think it was inspired to do it later, but also because he had a second passion and he wants to become a nurse, because he wanted to do something that was more hands-on, where the feeling had a bigger impact, a bigger social impact than with performing. And we talked about this for a long time of like, what should we do? Because he knew that this would imply studying for 3 years, especially because it's something you can't study abroad. Sometimes artists, they pick up something else and they do it at the same time as they're still working, because they can do that at the same time. So this was like, okay, eventually we're going to have like a 3-year gap. Let's see how and when we're going to do it. And he was always kind of like, oh, maybe one day you want to have babies, so maybe we can do that at the same time. It's like, oh, what a rational, great way of thinking. How can you plan babies? But that was kind of like, eventually in the future, this is going to happen. And I was totally open, because that's what he wanted to do, and it was important for him. So of course I will support him in anything he wants to do. So when Corona happened, it was like, okay, well, this is gonna take a while. So why don't you just do it now? And actually we had the same thought without talking about it. We had the same thought, and then we met up and we were like, and I was like, I think you should study now. And he was like, yeah, actually I already looked at like places to study. So it was a very easy decision. And it was a commitment for 3 years. And for me, it was kind of like, okay, well, I'm going to be back at doing solo, which I used to do. And this is back to like, great to be comfortable on stage by yourself, because eventually maybe you have to do that more. And there was still Corona. Corona took 2 years. Basically for 2 years, I didn't really work. I did a little bit of TV stuff, but really not that much. And then out of nowhere, Cirque du Soleil hit me up on Facebook. And I was like, holy shit. And it was a contract for, at that point, 1.5 years, and Francis had 1.5 years of study left. And this is the show I'm currently on, Lucia, a European tour. I am European, in the best cities in Europe, for exactly that time frame that he still needed to study. And I was looking for solo work anyways, and this was a solo contract. So it was kind of, it fell from heaven. It was like made for me. So this is totally the perfect setup. And
he has no trouble with it, because he's doing what he loves and what he wants to do.
I was exactly, because that's the other thing. If this had happened like maybe 3 years earlier, I would have probably declined, because we were doing everything as a duo and we had so good job propositions that there was no need to do solo. And then always, if you decide to be apart for a while, it's always harder to come back, because you have to train again together, but it's also, you have to plan together. It's like a relationship or a business partner. So this one was easy to say yes to. And he was just a little bit like, I would say jealous, but he was like, I also want to work for Cirque du Soleil one day. And he hasn't yet. So probably in the future, we'll try to get also a job here together. But now this is the perfect setup. And it's so much fun.
I love this. And I know that like we're kind of wandering away from advice for circus artists, but I think it's really important for people who are in a duo of any capacity, whether it's hand-to-hand, whether it's an aerial duo, anything like this, that like you're saying, just like a business partnership or a relationship, in these duos, you plan for your future together.
Yeah. And if you have it open, always a possibility to do solo as well, it just gives you more peace. And he is also a really strong solo artist as well. So I know, like, now this didn't work out with babies at the same time as his studies. So whenever I want to have babies, I know that I can just come to him and say like, hey, look, I want to have babies now. And he's going to be like, sure, don't worry.
Yeah, great.
Let's do another year, 2 years, 3 years of break. And then he will do his things. So definitely, I think it will help for any kind of duo to be also a strong soloist, and also to give the other person freedom to do whatever they want to do and to work together by choice and not because you have to. That's always better.
What have we not talked about?
What have we not talked about? I talked about Lucia. Do people know about Lucia? Do you want to know more about Lucia, what I do here?
I think if they want to know more, they should go on your TikTok.
They should go on my TikTok.
If you don't know about Lucia or any Cirque du Soleil show,
you should check that out.
You should go on, and if you don't know about TikTok, that's probably the best for your mental health. But you actually have a great presence.
do you want some more like advice? Because I feel maybe.
Well, my
this is
final
gonna be, like-
question.
oh yes.
I mean, I think we're here. I think we
we're
get.
here. I think we're at the final
God, I'm so good at my job.
It happens.
Tell your life story in an hour, then let me ask you the final question. What advice would you give to yourself at the beginning of your career?
Yes. Don't be so scared. I was so scared to do something wrong, to go up, to talk to people, to mingle in social occasions. And I don't know exactly if this comes, I used to be really shy when I was a kid, but that kind of went away. And maybe then in circus school, because there was so much pressure to be a certain way, maybe that kind of formed me. But I remember that I was scared at, let's say, a Seven Fingers party to go and talk to Samuel Tétrault and just say hi, introduce myself. And I was so scared to just do anything wrong on stage it was like this, I need to be perfect. Or not only I need to be perfect, but kind of bit of anxiety and fear around just being myself. And it took me a while to understand that people are just people. And somebody up there is just another person, and you can go up to them and ask them
totally.
for advice. You can go up to them and say just hi. Of course, you don't want to be annoying, but you can say, hi, I'm Lea, I'm a circus artist, I'm new in the show. I used to do this now when I came on Lucia. I really made a point for myself. I'm like, okay, you're at this point now where you can do this. Every single person I met here, the first time I met them, I came up to them, was like, hey, I'm Lea, I'm the new artist for Seal Wheel. What's your name? And I would do this to the general tour director, who is somebody up there. I would do this to the cleaning lady. I would do this to the kitchen guys. I would do it to anybody, local, people we would meet for 2 days and not anymore, and people who would stay forever, just to kind of give them respect, but also to be like, I'm not afraid of you. I'm not afraid just because you're coming from the headquarters of Montreal and you've been around here for 20 years. Like, you're just a human like I am. So I'm meeting you on the same eye level. And that I would have loved to know earlier, that we are all on the same level as humans.
I love that so much. That's such good advice.
Thank you.
It really is. It's something that I wish I think that's a piece of advice I would want to give myself too. It's hard though. It's like, it's hard. It's almost like, especially when you're that young.
It's hard and it's uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And often you don't know what to say. And that's what I would go with the easiest. I would go with the easiest. Like, hi, my name is Lea. I'm an artist as well. Like, let's say you're going to a party and you're meeting people. Just go with the ease. Don't try to sell yourself either.
The best conversations are not usually the ones about our jobs, right? About circus. It's like there's so much more that you can talk to people about.
Yeah.
Even if you want a job from them.
Yeah.
You know?
And usually that's how you get the job from them. Because they will then also see you as a human and not just as another artist.
Thank you so much for coming on today, Lea. Where can people find you on the internet?
Oh my God. Everybody, you can find me always on the handle. It's a little long, but we can deconstruct it. So it's at Lea, Lea, Toran, Toran, Jenner, like Kylie Jenner, Genner. So that's my full name, and that's on Instagram. That's on TikTok, that's on YouTube, but mostly TikTok. I think if you're not on TikTok yet, I think that's
the reason it's the reason to be there.
It's a reason to be there.
Love it. Thanks, Lea.
Thanks, Shannon.
Thanks for listening, friends, fans, and foes. I'll talk at you next week. In the meantime, go to patreon.com/theartistathlete and show some love, send some support. Just like these fine Patreons that you're about to hear the voices of right now. The Artist Athlete podcast is supported solely by donations from people like you. Here's what some of those people have to say.
Hi, my name is Noah and I do hand balancing. Hi, my name is Woody and I do Leo. Thank you for listening to the Artist Athlete podcast.
Hi everyone, I'm Dominique, a ground acrobat, trapeze artist, and coach, currently bringing circus to the extremely cold but very beautiful Northern Ontario, Canada. Circus has changed my life and I'm so grateful to everyone in this community. Find me on Instagram at DomUpsideDown or my website domupsidedown.com.
Aloha, my name is Beth Russell and I live on the beautiful island of Maui, Hawaii. I am an aerial artist and movement instructor specializing in chakra yoga to keep me balanced and grounded. I play with silks, trapeze, lyra, rope, acro, aerial yoga and dance, slacklining, pole, bungee, and climbing. Really anything that goes up and allows me to explore 3D space. You can find my dedicated aerial page on Instagram at Maui Aerialist. If you find yourself coming to Maui, let's play.
Hey there, friends, fans, and enemies. This is Chris Alston, Patreon of the Artist Athlete Podcast, straps artist and lyra performer and acrobat out of Greenville, South Carolina. So if you're ever passing through, make sure to stop in and see me and my friends. We have a wonderful space, and we'd love to see you.
Hi, my name is Erica Lee. I'm from St. Louis, Missouri, and I'm an aerialist. I teach performing arts to elementary school during the day and do pole and swing and rope by night. I really like the Artist Athlete podcast because it gives me a lot of circus goals to look forward to. It gives me a lot of insight on what's going on around the world in circus, and that's why I'm Patreon.
Hello all. Thank you for tuning in to the Artist Athlete podcast. I am Opal Schwartz from Minneapolis, Minnesota. If you're ever in the cities, feel free to stop by the Aviary Minneapolis. It's a great time. With that, I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your week, and goodbye.
Hey there, artists and athletes. This is Andy Smith, owner and artistic director at Saltaire Circus School in Jacksonville Beach, Florida. And I want to thank you for contributing to the Artist Athlete podcast. If you ever find yourself down in Florida, come check us out. Whether you're an artist, athlete, or someone ordinary just looking to be extraordinary, we got a place for you.